As you watch this, more than 360 million people around the world owe money on purchases they have already received. The companies most of them have never walked into. No bank, no credit card statement, no interest rate printed on a bill, just a quiet promise. 4 easy payments. In 2024, Americans alone took out 335 million of these loans. 335 million. The average loan was $135, and most of them will never show up on a credit report. Your mortgage lender will not see them. Your auto loan officer will not see them. They are, in the language of federal regulators, phantom debt. The industry behind this is called buy now, pay later, and it grew 15,000% in a single decade. 15,000%, from $2.2 billion in 2014 to $342 billion in 2024. A number so large that when the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau started investigating, they found something that stopped them cold. 1 in 4 users was financing groceries. Not furniture, not electronics, groceries. And here's the part that should make you pay attention. 41% of buy now, pay later users paid late in the past year. The personal savings rate in this country has collapsed to 3.6%, less than half the long-term average. Gen Z is adding debt at 15% per year, and the federal government has effectively walked away from regulating the industry. So what is going on? Is buy now, pay later helping millions of Americans manage their money in a world where everything costs more? Or is it quietly building a debt crisis that nobody can see because the debt itself is invisible? That's what this video is about. The idea of splitting a payment is not new. It's actually one of the oldest tricks in American commerce. In 1856, a man named Edward Clark, business partner of Isaac Singer, the sewing machine inventor, came up with a plan. His machines cost about $100. That's roughly $3,800 today. Most families could not afford that in a lump sum, so Clark offered a deal. $1 down, $1 a week. Sales tripled in 1 year. By the early 1900s, installment buying had spread to pianos, furniture, and automobiles. In 1919, General Motors created something called GMAC to offer car loans. You could drive the car home today and pay over 12 months. Henry Ford actually hated consumer debt on principle. He thought people should just save up. But by 1928, Ford was forced to offer his own loan program just to keep up. Then came the Great Depression. The 1930s gave birth to layaway, a system where stores held your item while you paid for it over time. You didn't get the product until it was fully paid off. No credit check, no interest, just discipline. And it worked. Layaway thrived for decades at Sears, Kmart, Burlington Coat Factory. But then credit cards showed up. The Diners Club card launched in 1950. By the late 1950s, banks started letting people carry a balance from month to month. Visa and MasterCard spread through the 1970s, and by the 1980s, credit cards had essentially killed layaway. Why wait for your stuff when you can have it right now and just make the minimum payment? Walmart officially dropped layaway in 2006. A brief revival during the 2008 financial crisis didn't last. So here's the pattern. Consumer behavior shifted in 3 stages. Stage 1, layaway. Pay first, get the product later. Stage 2, credit cards. Get the product now, pay whenever, plus interest. Stage 3, buy now, pay later. Get the product now, pay in fixed chunks, often with 0 interest. Each stage made it easier to buy, and each stage made the debt a little less visible. In 2005, 3 students at the Stockholm School of Economics entered an entrepreneurship competition. Their names? Sebastian Siemiatkowski, Nicholas Adalbert, and Victor Jacobson. Siemiatkowski was the son of Polish immigrants. His family had struggled financially. He'd work at Burger King, he'd work in debt collection, and while working at a factoring company, he noticed something similar. Merchants wanted guaranteed payment at checkout. So his pitch was simple. Build a company that pays the merchant immediately and collects from the customer later. They entered the competition. They finished last, but one judge made a comment that stuck with them. The banks will never do it. They launched the company, originally called Creditor, with 60,000 euros. Their first transaction was at a Stockholm bookstore in April 2005. Here's the thing about Klarna that most people outside of Scandinavia miss. It wasn't a radical new idea in Sweden. Swedes already preferred paying by invoice. You'd order something, receive it, inspect it, and then pay. Klarna took that cultural habit and digitized it for online shopping. And then the money started rolling in. Sequoia Capital invested in 2010 at a $100 million valuation. By 2021, SoftBank's Vision Fund led a round that valued Klarna at $45.6 billion, Europe's most valuable private tech company. The crash was just as dramatic. Interest rates climbed. Tech valuations collapsed. In 2022, Klarna raised the money at a valuation of just $6.7 billion, an 85% haircut. They laid off 10% of their workers. Klarna went public on the New York Stock Exchange in September 2025 at $40 a share, but by February 2026, the stock had fallen to around $13. From its peak valuation at $45.6 billion to where it trades today, Klarna has lost roughly 97% of its peak value. There are class action lawsuits from investors, and yet, Klarna processes 3.4 million transactions every day. It has 114 million active users across 26 countries. It pulled in $2.81 billion in revenue in 2024. This company is simultaneously a financial disaster for investors and one of the most used financial products on the planet. Max Levchin was born in Kyiv, Ukraine. He co-founded PayPal with Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. Then in 2012, he started Affirm. Levchin's model was different from Klarna's. It was distinctly American. Transparent installment loans, clear terms, no hidden fees. Affirm went public in January 2021 at $49 a share. It doubled on day one. The stock peaked at about $169 in November of that year. Then it crashed 95% all the way down to under $9 by December 2022. As of February 2026, it clawed its way back to around $51. Big partnerships defined Affirm's path. It became Walmart's buy now, pay later partner in 2021. It partnered with Walmart, then Klarna poached Walmart in early 2025 by reportedly offering $200 to $300 million in equity to seal the deal. Affirm's chief operating officer publicly called their offer uneconomic, but Affirm fired back. It signaled with JP Morgan Chase, Costco, Best Buy, and Apple. And in late 2025, Affirm finally turned a profit for the first time, earning 23 cents a share versus a 54-cent loss just 1 year before. Revenue hit $3.22 billion. Nick Molnar was 18 years old during the 2008 financial crisis. He watched what that did to families, and he became convinced that his generation, millennials, didn't want credit cards. In 2014, in Sydney, Australia, he and his neighbor Anthony Eisen co-founded Afterpay. Their model was the one that became standard across the industry, pay in four interest-free installments over 6 weeks. Afterpay listed on Australia's stock exchange in 2016 at a $25 million valuation. This subject matter can be hard to digest, but for most Americans, their personal financial situation is the hardest subject to approach and manage, but with the Dollarwise budgeting app, you can finally take control, and since there's a free trial, you can see for yourself, get a full picture, automate your budget, get powerful insights, and set real goals that change your life. Download Dollarwise or go to dollarwise.com. By 2021, shares had surged 1,800%, and then Jack Dorsey's company Block, formerly Square, announced a $29 billion all-stock acquisition, one of the largest deals in Australian corporate history. Since then, Block has written down Afterpay's value by $12.2 billion. It's widely considered one of fintech's most expensive mistakes. Sezzle, founded in Minneapolis in 2016, somehow became the most profitable pure-play buy now, pay later company. A 27.7% net profit margin, a 107% return on equity. It joined the S&P Small Cap 600 in December 2025. Its stock is up over 4,000% from its 2023 lows. And then there's Apple. Apple announced Apple Pay Later in 2022, launched it in March 2023, and killed it in June 2024. 9 months. Apple couldn't make buy now, pay later work. Instead, it partnered with Affirm and others to offer installments through Apple Pay. PayPal, meanwhile, quietly became the biggest buy now, pay later player in America by user count. 56% of American buy now, pay later users say PayPal is their provider. They had the existing relationships with hundreds of millions of merchants. They just plugged the product in. Let's just talk numbers for a moment. The global buy now, pay later market hit roughly $560 billion in gross merchandise volume in 2025. Provider revenues totaled an estimated $23.4 billion. The industry grew at a compound annual rate of about 22% from 2021 to 2024, though it's slowing down now. In the United States, an estimated 86.5 million Americans used buy now, pay later in 2024. The CFPB documented that 6 major companies originated 335.8 million loans, totaling $45.2 billion in 2023. And the average loan, $135. The average repayment period, 6 weeks. Users averaged 6.3 loans per year per company and spent $848 annually through BNPL per lender. Application volumes went from about 100,000 per day in 2019 to over 1 million per day by 2022. But here's what puts it in perspective. The Richmond Federal Reserve calculated in 2026 that total US BNPL volume of about $70 billion is just 1.1% of total credit card spending. Outstanding BNPL debt at any given time is roughly $3 billion. Credit card debt is $1.23 trillion. Total household debt is $18.8 trillion. BNPL is not a systemic financial risk, not yet, but it is growing faster than any other category of consumer credit in the country. Millennials lead usage at 48%. Gen Z is at 40 to 44% and climbing fast. Gen X sits at 28%, Boomers 13%. But Gen Z is where the story gets interesting. During the 2024 holiday season, 54% of Gen Z shoppers used Buy Now, Pay Later, surpassing credit card usage at 50%. For the first time in any recorded data, a generation preferred BNPL to credit cards. Nearly 40% of Gen Z users say they use it weekly or more. The reasons are different depending on who you ask. Gen Z users are the most likely to say it's the only way they could afford the purchase. Millennials use it more as a budgeting tool. Gen X call it a paycheck bridge. Boomers are the most disciplined, 62% of them just budget before a BNPL purchase, and their late payment rate is just 12%. And for Gen Z, 39%. Now, the income picture is more complicated than you think. The easy story is that BNPL is a product for people who are broke. And sure, 72.6% of Buy Now, Pay Later users earn less than $75,000 a year. But Morgan Stanley found something unexpected in 2025. 38% adoption among households earning $100,000 to $150,000 versus 27% among those earning $25,000 to $50,000. Higher earners are actually using it more in some brackets. They treat it as a cash flow tool. But the data on financial stress is hard to ignore. The CFPB found that a third of BNPL users have credit scores below 620 or delinquent loans or rejected credit applications, a rate 97% higher than the average consumers. BNPL users carry $871 more in credit card debt and almost $12,000 less in savings than non-users. 58% told the Federal Reserve they used BNPL because it was the only way they could afford the purchase. Among those earning under $50,000, that number jumps to 72%. Black Americans use BNPL at the highest rate, 25%, followed by Hispanic Americans at 21%. Renters are 52% more likely to use it than homeowners. Women use it at higher rates than men. This is the part that should concern everyone. Regardless of your politics, Buy Now, Pay Later started off as a tool for stuff that you wanted, but you didn't need right away. A jacket, new headphones, furniture. Those are still the top categories. Fashion leads at 42% of purchases. Home and furniture, 42%. Electronics, around 30%. But the fastest growing category is groceries. Usage nearly doubled in a single year, from 14% of users financing groceries to 25%. Gen Z leads grocery BNPL at 33%. Food delivery via Buy Now, Pay Later hit 22%. When 1 in 4 users is financing groceries, we're not talking about lifestyle spending anymore. We're talking about purchasing power that is eroded to the point where people need 4 installments to buy food. And the data backs this up. Buy Now, Pay Later users make 28% more grocery trips using SNAP benefits than non-users. The Bank for International Settlements confirmed a positive correlation between BNPL adoption and inflation across countries. When prices go up, BNPL usage goes up. There's a reason Buy Now, Pay Later works so well, and it has nothing to do with interest rates. It's about how your brain processes money. Researchers call it reduced payment salience. When you split a $200 purchase into $40 payments, your brain treats each payment as a separate, smaller expense. The total cost hasn't changed, but it feels cheaper. A Harvard Business School working paper found that consumers don't even mentally connect the repayments back to the original purchase. They filed the installments under a different mental budget entirely. The spending effects are measurable. Harvard Business Review found that BNPL increases purchase likelihood from 17% to 26% and boosts cart sizes by roughly 10%. First-time BNPL users increased total spending by about $130, and that increase persisted for 24 weeks. It was also linked to dipping into savings and triggering overdraft fees. The American Marketing Association found that BNPL users spend 6.42% more than non-users. More than 49% of consumers admit they spend more when using BNPL than they would with a credit card. And BNPL users are 60% more likely to pick the premium version of a product over the budget option. Social media pours gasoline on this. Gen Z shoppers are 34% more likely to buy something because an influencer recommended it than because of a traditional ad. 1 in 2 TikTok users has spent at least $100 on impulse buys driven by shopping content in the past year. And BNPL is baked right into those platforms. Instagram shopping, TikTok shop, 1 click, 4 payments, done. Here's a number that captures the whole dynamic. 60% of general admission tickets to Coachella in 2025 were purchased through buy now, pay later. This is the central tension of the story. Americans say they are struggling. They say everything costs too much. And then they adopt a payment method that, when things go wrong, actually makes purchases cost more. Since early 2020, cumulative inflation has been roughly 25%. Wages have grown, yes, but cumulative real gains since the pandemic started are minimal. Take a moment and get some free, easy money. With a Chime checking account and my link, you can get $350 when you set up direct deposit and pair that with a nation-leading high-yield savings rate. There's literally no reason not to sign up right now. Chime.com/Caleb or link in the description below. The Cleveland Fed found that the bottom 40% of earners recovered purchasing power by the end of 2024, but only about 4.5 percentage points over 5 years, barely keeping pace. The personal savings rate peaked at 31.8% in April 2020 when stimulus checks arrived and nobody could go anywhere. It has since fallen to 3.6%. That is less than half of the long-run average. Credit card interest rates have climbed from about 15% in 2019 to over 21% today. So when a BNPL product comes along and says 0 interest, 4 payments, 6 weeks, you can see why 87% of users tell the Federal Reserve they chose it to spread out the payments, and 58% say it was to avoid interest charges. But here's where it gets complicated. 51% of Americans say BNPL encourages debt accumulation. Among Gen Z, that awareness is even higher, 57%. And yet, Gen Z is the fastest growing BNPL user base. They know it can be a trap. They use it anyway, because for many of them, the alternative is a credit card at 21% APR or not buying at all. The Federal Reserve put it plainly. Adults who report lower overall financial well-being were not only among the most likely to use BNPL, but most of these consumers also said they used it because it was the only way they could afford the purchase. That's not financial responsibility, that's math. Of all these issues surrounding buy now, pay later, this might be the most dangerous and the least understood. Most BNPL providers do not report your loans to the 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. That means you can carry multiple BNPL obligations across Klarna, Affirm, Afterpay, and PayPal at the same time, and none of it shows up when you apply for a mortgage, a car loan, or another credit card. Regulators call this phantom debt that exists, but nobody in the traditional financial system can see. The CFPB found that 63% of BNPL borrowers had multiple loans going at the same time. A third used multiple BNPL companies. For consumers aged 18 to 24, BNPL made up 28% of their total unsecured debt, and it was invisible to every other lender. The Department of Housing and Urban Development raised the alarm in June 2025, asking specifically how BNPL affects mortgage underwriting. They're concerned people might be qualifying for mortgages they cannot actually afford because their BNPL obligations are hidden from lenders. This is starting to change. Affirm began reporting all loans to Experian as of April 2025, and FICO launched a new credit score model that incorporates BNPL data for the first time. Early results show score changes of roughly plus or minus 10 points, similar to opening a new account. But full industry-wide adoption will take years. Meanwhile, 62% of BNPL users incorrectly believe their on-time payments are already helping their credit score. They're not yet, for most of them. Here's where politics enters the picture. Buy now, pay later exists in a legal gray area in the United States. The Truth in Lending Act, the main federal law governing consumer credit, kicks in for loans payable in more than 4 installments. The pay in 4 model was designed with exactly 4 payments to stay just below that line. That means no mandatory disclosures, no ability to repay checks, no federal dispute resolution, and no cap on late fees. The CFPB under the Biden administration tried to close this gap. In May 2024, the Bureau issued a rule classifying BNPL accounts as credit cards under existing regulation. The industry sued. Then the political landscape shifted. Under the Trump administration, the CFPB announced it would not enforce the BNPL rule and was considering throwing it out entirely. The Bureau's workforce was cut by an estimated 95%. Federal oversight of buy now, pay later has, for all practical purposes, stopped. Then New York stepped in. Governor Kathy Hochul signed the Buy Now, Pay Later Act in May 2025, the first state law built specifically for BNPL. It requires licensing, interest rate caps, fee limits, and dispute resolution that mirrors credit card protections. California has already fined multiple BNPL providers. The political fault line here is predictable. From the left, BNPL is a consumer protection gap. It targets vulnerable populations with invisible debt and no federal guardrails. Senator Kristen Gillibrand called it a vehicle for predatory companies. From the right, BNPL is consumer choice and financial innovation. Zero-interest, short-term products shouldn't be regulated the same as revolving high-interest credit cards. The industry's own data shows charge-off rates lower than credit cards, and over-regulation could push people towards far worse options like payday loans at 400% APR. There is actually bipartisan agreement on a few things: transparency in BNPL terms, credit bureau reporting to prevent loan stacking, and proportionate regulation tailored to the product rather than copy and pasting credit card rules into a 6-week loan. But whether common ground turns into legislation depends on who holds that power and when. Outside the United States, the direction is clear. Every major economy is bringing BNPL under formal credit regulation. Australia enacted full BNPL legislation in December 2024, and providers now need credit licenses and must perform affordability checks. The United Kingdom's Financial Conduct Authority will begin formal regulation in July 2026. The European Union's new Consumer Credit Directive covers BNPL and requires member states to implement rules by November 2026. Sweden leads the world in BNPL adoption, 23 to 24% of all e-commerce payments. Germany is second at about 20%, driven by its cultural tradition of invoice purchasing. The Middle East is adopting BNPL rapidly because its interest-free structure fits naturally with Islamic finance's prohibition on usury. China's Ant Group serves roughly 500 million users through its Alipay ecosystem, though regulation has constrained growth. India and Southeast Asia are the fastest-growing markets, and the Bank for International Settlements has confirmed that BNPL adoption is highest in countries with more e-commerce, higher inflation, less efficient banking, and looser financial regulation. Klarna's workforce story is worth pausing on. The company went from about 5,500 employees to 3,000, a 45% cut. Their AI chatbot, built on OpenAI's technology, handled 2.3 million customer conversations in its first month alone. That's the workload of 700 full-time agents. The CEO said something that most tech executives won't. Many people in tech tend to downplay the consequences of AI on jobs, especially white-collar jobs. I don't want to be one of them. But then Klarna started hiring humans again in May 2025. Turns out, leaning too hard on AI led to lower service quality. The robots were fast, but customers noticed the difference. Meanwhile, the big banks are fighting back. McKinsey estimates banks have lost $8 to $10 billion a year for BNPL through lost credit card volume. So they're doing two things. First, launching their own BNPL products. Chase has Pay Over Time, Citi has FlexPay, Amex has Planet. Second, blocking the competition. Chase restricted third-party BNPL transactions on its cards in late 2024. Capital One banned them entirely, calling it an unacceptable risk. 70% of active BNPL users say they'd prefer the same service from their own bank, and the banks noticed. The explosive growth is over. 300% annual growth has settled down to about 20%, headed toward 10 to 16% as the market matures. Global BNPL users are projected to hit 900 million by 2027, is expected to pass $184 billion by 2030. Regulation will tighten everywhere. The UK, Australia, and the European Union will all have full BNPL regulation in place by 2027. The United States is the holdout. Whether federal action happens probably depends on the next election cycle, but globally, the direction is set. AI will get deeper into underwriting and fraud detection. The BNPL fraud prevention market is projected to nearly triple by 2030, and Klarna's workforce experiment shows where things are headed for operations. The most important question is one nobody can answer yet. What happens to this industry in a recession? Buy now, pay later has never been tested in a real downturn. Not a market dip, a recession. With unemployment rising and incomes falling, Morgan Stanley warned in 2025 that rapid BNPL growth during consumer stress would be a warning sign. 45% of BNPL loans are going to deep subprime borrowers. 78% of subprime applicants get approved. These are the exact consumers who get hit first in a recession. And unlike credit card companies, which can cut your credit card limit before a storm hits, BNPL providers can only tighten standards going forward. They can't take back credit they've already extended. The Federal Reserve said it plainly in February 2026. The impact of BNPL on financial stability appears limited at present, but spillovers to other consumer credit markets are possible. Buy now, pay later is not a villain, and it's not a hero. It's a mirror. It affects an economy where cumulative inflation has outrun wages for millions of families, where the personal savings rate has been cut in half, where a generation that watched their parents drown in credit card debt decided they'd rather split things into 4 payments than carry a revolving balance at 21%. And it reflects an industry that grew so fast it outrun every regulator, every credit bureau, and every risk model designed to keep track of it. At $560 billion globally, 360 million users, and 5% of all e-commerce, buy now, pay later is no longer an experiment. It is infrastructure. The question is whether the institutions responsible for consumer credit, the regulators, the credit bureaus, the banks, and the BNPL companies themselves will catch up before the next downturn forces the issue for them.